Graph the polynomial f of x equals negative x to the third power plus 4x squared minus 3x. Okay. So first things first, when we're trying to graph a polynomial, I am going to look at end behavior. And in behavior, I'm going to look at the leading term, which is negative x to the third power. Since this exponent is odd, that means my arrows are going to go in opposite directions. And since this is a negative, that means it has to go down at the end. So that means that this arrow is going to go up. Okay. So the other thing I need to do is I need to find my zeros. So for this one, when I look at each term, negative x to the third, 4x squared, negative 3x. Each of these terms, I can take out an x. In fact, I'm going to take out a negative x. So if I have negative x to the third, and if I factor out a negative x, I'm going to be left with x squared. And to double check myself to make sure I'm correct, if I multiply negative x times x squared, I should get negative x to the third. And then I'm going to do I have positive 4x squared. If I factor out a negative x, that's going to be a negative 4x. And I'm going to double check to make sure I'm correct. So negative x times negative 4x, a negative makes a positive. X times 4x is 4x squared. And then negative 3x, if I factor out a negative x, I'm going to get a positive 3. And I'm going to double check myself, so negative x times 3 is negative 3x. Okay. So now that this is an x squared, I can factor it with my 2 parentheses. So I'm going to ask myself what two things multiply together gives me x squared, and so that's x times x. And then I'm going to ask myself what two numbers multiply together gives me 3, but when I add them gives me negative 4, so that's negative 3 and negative 1. Okay. Don't forget there's negative x on the outside, so I'm going to just bring that negative x down. Okay. So now I'm going to set each of my factors equal to 0, so I have negative x equals to 0. I'm going to solve for x, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. So then I'm left with x equals 0 divided by negative 1 is 0. So my first dot is going to be right here at 0. I'm going to put a 0 there. Okay. And then I'm going to do my next factor, which is x minus 3. So x minus 3 is equal to 0. I'm going to solve for x, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So my next factor is x is equal to a positive 3. So I'm going to put a positive 3 right here. And then my last factor is x minus 1. X minus 1 is equal to 0. Add 1 to both sides. So my next 0 is a positive 1. And then that goes right here. Since each of these answers only showed up once, that means that my multiplicity is 1. So it's just going to go through, go through, go through, and then connect at the end.